Okay, people, hi. We have to have a talk about theological literacy. Several times over the past month, I've heard people say things like, well, God doesn't care how much theology I know. Or, I don't have to have a divinity degree to go to heaven. Now, both of those statements are true. Obviously, hopefully, obviously. If it's not obvious to you, you have bigger issues than this. Of course, you don't need a divinity degree to go to heaven. I hope nobody's ever actually thought that. Here's the thing, though. This does not mean that you don't need information about salvation that God has revealed. Theology is important, okay? Theology is not just something that's confined to a seminary or confined to a priesthood. Theology is knowledge of God, knowledge of the information that He has revealed to us. So it's really everybody can be a theologian, even if you're a child, even if you are maybe not intellectually gifted. Anyone who loves God and who wants to know more about God can be a theologian, and in fact must be a theologian. Because information that God has revealed is crucial. He reveals information about Himself. He reveals information about the nature of humanity as it was intended to be, and about His expectations for human behavior. And He also reveals information about salvation and what really matters in this life and in the next, and what is going to assure to us that we spend the next life where we want to spend it. So this is incredibly important stuff. And unfortunately, right now, we live in a culture of reductio ad absurdum, okay? Reduction to absurdity of intentional ignorance. And this is extremely dangerous. This is dangerous because we're losing our ability to think critically, and we're losing our ability to differentiate between what we believe and what we want to believe. To differentiate between the truth and what we hope the truth is, or what we want the truth to be, or what it would be really convenient if the truth was. These are not the same thing. Now, there's a book you should read if you haven't read already. It's called 1984 by my close personal friend George Orwell. 1984 is a vision of what Orwell really feared was going to happen to the world by 1984, by the year 1984. Now, he wasn't totally correct in that his date was wrong. His date was a little early. But unfortunately, I feel that he is correct in where society, not just American society, but in terms of where the world is going, of where humanity is going. So hopefully you have read the book. If you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it since high school literature class and you kind of hated it then because you were 13 years old and didn't know crap, read it again. Read it again. It's chilling. Essentially, in 1984, there was a one-world government, and every aspect of life is controlled by that government, down to what people think and down to what they say. And the language of this one world government is called thinkspeak. And thinkspeak is a progressively reduced and condensed language that is, again, intentionally implemented by the government, the party, to eliminate words from the language gradually until eventually there's only one word. And the reason for that is because when you lose the words, when you lose the ability to talk about something, you lose the ability to think about it. And eventually you lose the ability to even recognize it and to know what's going on. This same thing is happening in theology. It happens when we are so addicted to our emotions and our political agendas and our desire to have other people think we're smart, and our desire to have other people think that we're moral people, and our desire to have other people think that we are good Christians, as those other people define good Christianity, whatever the heck that means. It usually means Unitarian Universalism. When we lose the ability to talk about it, we lose the ability to think about it, we lose the ability to understand it and to recognize it. Mark these words, people. This is why, if you are attending a church, Orthodox or not, where knowledge is rejected, where the quest for knowledge, the quest for enriching one's spiritual life through reading, through discussion with priests, monks, nuns, bishops, whatever, is discouraged, run. See, the world doesn't care about truth. The world cares about comfort, but the world does not actually care about truth. And this is why everyone's miserable. Because when you're looking for comfort obsessively, you're never going to find it. Comfort goes hand in hand with truth. So what we have to do is look for truth. Because God is truth. We look for truth, we find truth. Through God's grace, we will also be comforted. This is why the learning has to continue. Becoming a Christian is not the be-all and end-all of your life. It's the beginning of your life. I'll say that again. Becoming a Christian is not the goal. It is not the be-all and end-all of your life. It doesn't mean that you stop praying. It doesn't mean that you stop learning. And it doesn't mean that the spiritual warfare stops. Because actually what it means is all of that has to ramp up. How much of an idiot would you be if you joined the army and then got upset because after basic training you had to go off and fight? Be a huge idiot, right? You would need to keep training. You would need to keep shooting your guns. You would need to keep learning about the enemy. You would need to keep learning about what the latest warfare techniques are and how that enemy is using them. Same thing in the spiritual life. Reductio ad absurdum. Once you open your eyes, you will see this everywhere. And what's most frightening, in my opinion, is you're even going to see it from people who consider themselves church people. You're even going to see this from pastors and clergy. You're going to see this kind of a refusal to open their eyes. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. So, theological ignorance. There's two kinds. There's ignorance because you don't know, and there's ignorance because you don't want to know. And this is the dangerous type. We must always want to know. And if it threatens our preconceived notions about anything, if it offends us, if it riles up our ego, because all of a sudden we're confronted with the fact that, life isn't all about us. Life is not all about the ego. Don't concern yourself with things that make you mad for no reason. Well, maybe that's good. Maybe if we are irritated, that's a good thing, because it gets us focused. It can be painful. It can mean uncovering and exposing and dealing with unpleasant truths about our interior life, yes. But sometimes discomfort is necessary. And if pulling back the veil of our ignorance and really jumping into this battle is uncomfortable, then so be it. It's fine. I use the analogy in the prison a lot about burn victims. If you've ever suffered a severe, extensive burn, treating a burn is actually worse than getting a burn. Because if you have deep tissue burns, the doctors have to cut these hatch marks into your skin so that new skin will grow. Because otherwise what will happen is when your burn heals, your skin will harden and calcify, and you won't be able to move at all. This is why you see victims of burns from darkest Africa, where it looks like their skin is melted and their jaw and their neck area is fused to their shoulder. That's why, because they didn't have those cuts made into their skin so that the new skin could grow. Also, infection is a terrible risk with burn victims, so that's why they have to be debrided constantly. Think about this. You have a 3rd-degree burn, and now nurses every day have to come in with a metal, a Brillo brush, and scrub your burn. Can you imagine that pain? No, you can't. I can't either. Okay, this is why a lot of times these patients have to be anesthetized daily. Because in order to prevent them dying from an infection that gets sealed underneath a burn, they have to do the debriding. It's terrible. Spiritually, it's the same thing. This is painful. Becoming the Christian that God wants you to be is going to be painful because it involves crucifixion of the will. And this pursuit of theological knowledge is painful because it uncovers our own sinfulness, our own arrogance, our own brokenness, our own hatefulness. And it also is going to be controversial for those people around us because there's a lot of people who aren't comfortable with anyone around them and their friends or their family, or sometimes even, unfortunately, in their church, taking the reins and saying, I am going to try to fix my life before it's too late. If somebody has a problem with that, if somebody has a problem with you learning, that's really okay. It's none of their business, but it's okay because they can't make you stop. They can't make you stop praying. They can't make you stop learning. So smile and nod and love them and pray for them and ignore them. So God grant us the grace to be saved from theological thinkspeak. Think about these things.